in on the latest issues surrounding the questions that were apparently asked of Donald Trump. I think there's a couple of super important things there. First of all, it always bothers me that the powerful get to play by different rules. So if you were under federal investigation, do you think the FBI would send you the questions ahead of time and let you craft the answers, let your team of lawyers craft the answers ahead of time? Hell no. They'd bring you in for questioning, they'd spring all those questions on you, and you'd be in a world of trouble. So Donald Trump is getting special treatment. I get it, he's the president, but it sucks that the president gets to be treated in a way that an average citizen would never, ever get. So he's actually getting biased treatment on his behalf, in his favor, although you could never tell from all of his crying. But that's not what I mainly wanted to talk about. The main thing is Donald Trump had a weird reaction to the Mueller questions. So if you haven't seen them, the New York Times leaked all the questions that Special Counsel Robert Mueller is asking Donald Trump. So they had already given it to Trump. Most people think the Trump team leaked them, and there's logic behind that. Mueller wouldn't want those questions out there. But Trump then had an interesting reaction to it on Twitter. He said, see, no questions about collusion. And everybody looking at the questions were like, what do you mean? There's a ton of questions about collusion. They asked about how the famous Trump Tower meeting where Don Jr. and Kushner and Manafort were at. And then they ask about the Manafort and whether he cooperated with the Russians. They asked about Mike Flynn and whether he talked about the Russians. So there was actually a lot of questions about collusion. So why did Trump say that there were none? He read the same questions. The reason is, in his mind, the real collusion is money laundering. And there weren't any questions about money laundering. So he's like, oh, thank God. They're just talking about collusion during the campaign, which is no big deal. They're just talking about whether we talked to the Russians and got the emails during the campaign. I don't care about that at all. I'll survive that in a second. Obstruction of justice, I'll survive that in a second. They haven't really gotten to the beef, which is the decades of money laundering that Trump has been doing for the Russians. You will see that I'm absolutely right about that. And that's why Trump today is breathing a sign of relief and kind of doing a little bit of an end zone dance, because he thinks, they're not onto the real issue. The real issue is I'm a criminal, and I've been a criminal for a long, long time. And that's why he's beholden to the Russians. There's a hint of a question about Felix Sater and a deal that they were going to do in Moscow. But the reality is that's not the big deal. It's not that Trump was going to build something in Russia that's the issue. It's all the properties that the Russian oligarchs bought in the United States through Donald Trump and how they launder their money. So I hope that Mueller is hiding the ball, and that's what he's actually going after, and that he didn't ask the questions about that on purpose so that Trump is not tipped off to it. Or the other scenario is he's not really going there, in which case that's a disaster, because I think the other charges are weaker, and I think he should get to the heart of the matter. I hope he's springing a bear trap on him, but for right now, it looks like those questions are not related to what I think is the essence of the issue. And obviously, based on his reaction, what Donald Trump thinks is the essence of the investigation, which is the money laundering, stupid. So by God, if Mueller's team is not looking into it, turn around, go in that direction. That's much more fruitful and much more damaging to our democracy if he's literally financially beholden to the Russians. But we'll find out, because they're getting closer and closer. And once you start at least asking questions of the president, for better or for worse, we are beginning to come to the near of the end. So we'll see what he comes up with in the investigation. But that's your answer for why Trump appears to be relieved for the moment being.